Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to continue a series we started last month, which is my suggestions that I'd like to be passed to the developers. Also, at the same time, if you guys have any vehicles that you want to see or any ideas that you want to see, I'd like to see comments on them. Let's see what we can get rolling and let's see what can be passed on. This series will have a look at some posts from people on the forums talking about specific vehicles and ideas which I generally find interesting. So this time we'll have a look at some ground and aviation vehicles, and as always, if you enjoy the content, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Let's get started. The first post is from Slowmo212, and it is about the FH1, specifically the McDonnell FH1 Phantom. McDonnell was invited by the US Navy to cooperate in the development of a shipboard jet fighter, using an engine from the turbojets being developed by Westinghouse Electric Corporation, with 3 prototypes being ordered on the 30th of August 1943, the new aircraft gaining the designation XFD-1. When the first prototype was completed in January of 1945, only one Westinghouse 19XB-2B engine was ready for installation. As a result, ground runs and taxi tests were conducted with the single new engine. Eventually, McDonnell grew so confident in the aircraft that the first flight on the 26th of January 1945 was made, and only with one turbojet engine. During these flight tests, the Phantom became the first US Navy aircraft to exceed 500 miles per hour. With successful completion of tests, a production contract was awarded on the 7th of March 1945 for 100 FD-1 aircraft. With the end of the war, the Phantom production contract was then reduced to 30 aircraft, but then was soon increased back to 60. The first Phantoms were delivered to USN fighter squadrons, the VF-17A, which was then later redesignated to the 171 in August of 1947. With the squadron receiving a full complement of 24 aircraft on the 29th of May 1948. Beginning in November 47, Phantoms were delivered to the United States Marine Corps Squadron VMF-122, making it the first USMC combat squadron to deploy jets. VF-17A became the USN's first fully operational jet carrier squadron when it deployed aboard USS Saipan on the 5th of May 1948. The Phantoms in the early years mainly served in air shows and also exhibition flying, famously flown by the Grey Angels and the Flying Leathernecks. As for her combat experience, she was to be short-lived. The Phantom's limited range and light armament, notably its inability to carry bombs, made it best suited for duties as a point defense interceptor aircraft. However, its speed and rate of climb were only marginally better than existing propeller-powered fighters and fell short of other jets of the era, such as the Lockheed P-80 Shooting Star, prompting concerns that the Phantom would be outmatched by enemy jets it might face. In addition, the Second World War had demonstrated the value of naval fighters that could double as fighter bombers, a capability the Phantom noticeably lacked. Finally, the aircraft exhibited some design issues. Its navigational avionics were poor. It could not carry ejection seats, and the location of the machine guns in the nose caused pilots to be blinded by the muzzle flash. By the time of the Phantom's introduction, the Banshee and the Panther had already begun flight tests around that time, better satisfying the Navy's desire for a versatile, long-range, high-performance jet. Consequently, the FH-1 saw little weapons training and was mainly used for conversion training from prop fighters to jets in preparation for flying the Panther or the Banshee. In June 1949, the VF-171 was re-equipped with the Banshee, and thus their Phantoms were turned over to the 172. This squadron, along with the NATC, VX-3, and also VMF-122, turned over their Phantoms to the United States Naval Reserve by late 1949 after receiving their own Banshees. The FH-1 would then see training duties with the USNR until being replaced by the Panther in July 54, and with no FH-1 ever seeing combat, having been retired from frontline service before the outbreak of the Korean War. We have another variant of the F-16E as well. This is from UAE H-500, and it is about the F-16E Desert Falcon. In the late 1990s, the United Arab Emirates began seeking a next-generation multi-role fighter that would offer significant technological improvements over existing platforms. While several options were considered, including the Eurofighter Typhoon and the Dassault Rafale, the UAE ultimately selected a heavily modified version of the American F-16, resulting in the creation of the F-16 Block 60. Unlike previous export variants, the Block 60 was developed specifically to meet the operational needs of the UAE, with Lockheed Martin and General Electric working closely with Emirati defense officials to create what would become the most advanced F-16 ever built. The new aircraft was designated the F-16E for the single-seat variant and the F-16F for the two-seater version. It introduced several cutting-edge features at the time, such as the AN/APG-80 AESA radar, advanced electronic warfare systems, and conformal fuel tanks, to increase range without sacrificing agility. It was also the first F-16 to be equipped with the General Electric F-110 GE132 engine. Deliveries began in 2004, with a total of 80 aircraft delivered to the UAE. These jets have remained in active service and continue to be a critical part in the UAE Air Force's air power. Used in both defensive and coalition operations, the F-16E and F have been cited as a benchmark for future 4.5 generation fighters. This vehicle has access to a lot of really cool stuff, and of course has access to all the crazy missiles you would want too. The AIM-9M and also X, the AIM-120B and C, and technically it can also take the Mika missile from the French. It also can carry Mavericks, JDAMs, Paveways, and also the Mark 80 series of bombs too. Pretty crazy. Ghost Maxi has a suggestion for a pretty cool Heinkel, the HE-111 H-16 Nachtjäger. This is a night fighter and ground striker version of the vehicle, which doesn't just have the 20mm, but also it has access to 13mm too. Depending on the source, this unique H-16 was part of the Nachtjagdschwarm by the Luftflotte 6, with either 5 MG-FF/Ms against the nightly attacks of Soviet biplanes, or 3 30mm MG-131s and 2 MG-FF/Ms, those are the 20mm, not just for night hunting, but also against Soviet ground targets, including trains. It came to be as the Luftflotte 6 didn't have enough night fighters and ground strafers of their own, such as Bf-110s and also Ju-88s and the Do-217 series. With delays in production in 1943, they had to make do with modifying the HE-111 H-16 with some of the armaments talked about. But unfortunately, it did lose the bombs, or at least some of the bomb capacity of the vehicle. Operated by Gunther Bertram, the HE-111 H-16 Night Fighter was mainly used against the Russian biplane raids. Against the HE-111s, it was perfectly adequate in comparison. Slow speed wasn't an issue, and also the Russian biplanes could outturn the vehicle, but it wasn't defenseless, since it had the MG-81Z, the MG-131, and also the MG-FF/Ms, so therefore they could annihilate the biplanes. On daytime runs against ground targets and infantry, it could still carry bombs on the left-hand side of it, so therefore it was limited to carry around about 1,000 kilos, which could target mainly infantry, light armored vehicles, trucks, cars, but obviously taking priority in the bombing targets to return and then strafe later on. There was also a fixed 20mm MG-FF/M in the gondola, partly taken over from the HE-111 H-3, which received a forward-firing one to strafe ships. However, over the newer versions, the forward gondola was redesigned, received some armor, but lost the armament. But on this plane, it was mounted in the armor as a further fixed armament, which you can see in the pictures. Between March and July of 1943, Bertram had, with this night fighter, 14 victories, which is pretty impressive for what this vehicle is. We also have a post from Ghost King, which is talking about a Wiesel 1 variant, the ATM, which has access to the Hot Missile and an RMK-30. Nearing the end of its service life, the Fawn Cracker was becoming insufficient for the needs of the German airborne units, so the army began looking for better options. Key features were mobility, small arms fire, and shrapnel resistance, as well as air transportability in common NATO transport aircraft. Porsche was part of this competition, however, was not able to provide exactly the features that interested the Bundeswehr. Initially, the Bundeswehr cancelled the project, but Porsche and MAK continued development because of foreign interests. Rheinmetall was a lot more successful later when the demand in Germany was brought up again. The Wiesel was eventually chosen from among the candidates that competed in the trials, named because of its small size and agility. The Wiesel was also preferred due to its agility to be integrated with a wide assortment of weapons. You can see many of them already in the game, and also obviously images online. However, one of the most interesting ones is the ATM prototype series. In 1998, the Wiesel 1 Advanced Turret Modular was shown during an open day of Luftlandbrigade 26 Saarland. The Wiesel 1 ATM is designed for a wide range of tasks from reconnaissance to anti-tank to surveillance purposes. The ATM weapon system, introduced in 1997, served as a versatile platform for both observation and reconnaissance, in addition to functioning as a weapon system. The system comprises of three key components: a stabilized, elevated sensor platform capable of rising up to 1.5 meters above the roof of the Wiesel, an internal control system located within the vehicle, and a turret equipped with hot missiles, along with either a cannon or a machine gun. Designed to fulfill the operational needs of the French and German armed forces, the HOT/ATM system can be mounted on light, tracked, and wheeled armored vehicles. It's engineered to perform advanced observation tasks while also engaging targets with the HOT anti-tank guided missiles at a maximum range of 4,000 meters. The turret is equipped with a mast-mounted stabilized sensor pod that includes a color CCD camera, a thermal imaging camera, an electro-optical block, and also a laser rangefinder. The sensor pod allows for increased situational awareness, automatic target tracking, and also missile tracking. Inside the vehicle, the monitoring and display module enables the operator to conduct battlefield surveillance, accurately localize targets on a digital terrain map, automatically track targets, select targets for engagement, and also launch hot missiles with minimal response time. The turret is unmanned, with the operator positioned on the right side of the vehicle and the vehicle commander seated on the left. We also have a post from Nostalgistic, which is for the M4A6 Sherman. In 1942, an engine development program for a new M4 variant would start, which ended up having a Caterpillar tractor company-made air-cooled radial multi-fuel engine being picked. With an engine picked, the Ordnance Committee would order an experimental medium tank for the engine, designated the M4E1. The prototype, which was Chrysler built, would be based on the M4A4 with its elongated hull and chassis for its large engine. However, the M4E1 would receive some extra changes itself, namely rectangular bulges on the rear deck and floor due to its even larger engine. The engine used would be an air-cooled version of the Curtiss-Wright R1820 Cyclone 9, which was an engine that was widely used on aircraft at the time, including the B-17 Flying Fortress. Caterpillar Tractor Company would modify the engine to be a fuel-injected diesel, with related changes to the pistons, cylinder heads, and lubricant systems, with everything else staying the same. The modified engine would be known as the D200A, and despite the changes, the engine was still a multi-fuel possible engine, able to take a range of fuels. It would be fitted with a new transfer case that was capable of increasing the shaft speed to 1.5 times the speed of the crankshaft, with the new engine producing 450 horsepower at 2,000 RPM. The Ordnance Committee would change the D200A's production designation to RD1820 after having satisfactory testing and performance trials. The first M4E1 would begin testing at the Caterpillar Proving Ground in December of 42. And by the time of May 43, more M4E1s would be shipped to Fort Knox, with a fourth shipped to General Motors Proving Grounds. The testing of Fort Knox would identify problems with the gear train, clutch, and scoring between piston and cylinder walls. This discovery would let these problems be addressed. and with them addressed, the Ordnance Committee would order 1,000 of the engines and would direct 775 of them to be directly installed on the production version of the M4E1, which would be the M4A6, with the rest of the engines being installed on the M4A4s for more testing. Chrysler would begin production of the M4A6 at Detroit Arsenal, with each tank costing $64,455. The first M4A6 would be shipped on the 28th of April 1943, and the M4A6 would have several differences from the M4E1 it was based on, with the biggest of which being its cast front. Said front would be married to the M4A4's rear due to the need to accommodate such a larger engine. The M4A6's class front would feature a sharp nose that improved ballistic protection compared to the more rounded cast of the late M4s. Although despite the M4A6's having better performance and fuel economy than the previous Sherman variants, the production would be discontinued in February of 1944, with only 75 tanks being made and in turn being declared limited standard. This was because the US Army decided to concentrate on gasoline-powered tanks like the M4A3, and this left the M4A6s to be only used in training, and the British had a name for them under their nomenclature system, which was the Sherman 7. We also have a post about the Object 219M from Chieftain Warrior. The T-80BV entered service in 1985, differing from the earlier T-80B with improved upper glacis composite armor and contact 1 ERA across the hull and turret front. In the early 2000s, Spetsmash, the St. Petersburg-based Special Design Bureau, began development on a number of upgrades to both the T-80BV and also the T-80U. There are a number of reasons behind the decision to upgrade the T-80BVs rather than make a new vehicle. The T-80BV could reasonably take an extra 2 tons. The power plant could reasonably be increased from 1250 horsepower to 1400 horsepower. The fire control system could be replaced with a newer one. Protection could be improved through dynamic means and shared designs with other vehicles. And upgrading would mean major components wouldn't have to be remanufactured, allowing the cost reduction of 35 to 45%. A number of designs were constructed, including the Object 219 AM2, which was a T-80U fitted with the Hardkill Arena E APS. There was also the T-80UA, which was the Object 219 AM1, which featured improved internal systems and entered service in 2005. You had the T-80UE1, which was the Object 219 AC1, which featured the turret of the T-80UD on the T-80BV hull, as well as the same upgrades as the T-80UA, and that entered service in 2005. And then you have the Object 219M. This is also known as the T-80BV-RM. It was by far the most comprehensive upgrade. It was developed a bit later than the other vehicles, which were mentioned as part of the Project Motobol from around 2006 to 2008. A single prototype was produced, and during tests showed outstanding performance. However, development of the project was cancelled in 2008, largely due to how expensive it was. A brief attempt was made at reviving the project in 2010, but it went nowhere. In 2017, the first T-80BVM prototypes were unveiled, and they entered service in 2018. The BVM featured some good upgrades, but was essentially just a cheaper version of the Object 219M, lacking a number of key features that made the latter stand out. The single Object 219M prototype would go on to Omsk around 2019, after Spetsmash closed work on tank-related projects 2 years prior. Around the same year, Omsk fitted and tested it with an improved Burlak turret, previously seen fitted on the T-72B chassis. The current status of the prototype is unknown. The Object 219M is fitted with a 125mm 2A46 M4 cannon, an upgrade over the standard T-80BV's 2A46 M1. The gun is fully stabilized and fires a wide range of ammunition, including the 3BM60 APF-SDS. The 9K112 ATGM guidance system was removed and replaced with the 9K119 Reflex, which is the tandem missile, as on the T-80BVM. The 1A33 fire control system was replaced with the 1A45M system, a modernized version of that of the T-80U, and it includes the 1G46-2 gunner's sight and the T01K04MDT commander's sight, both with a laser rangefinder and thermals. The turret was fitted with a roof-mounted 6P49 12.7mm MG. The protection of the Object 219M was upgraded significantly. Relic ERA was applied across the turret front and the hull front and sides, in a very similar layout to the T-80 BVM. Rubber flaps, similar to those on the T-80U, were applied to the turret front. By far, the best part of the Object 219M's protection is the installation of the Arena E hard kill active protection system. This system protects against projectiles up to 700 meters per second in speed and has protection zone of 270 degrees. It has a detection zone of 50 meters and also 8 launchers. It was also fitted with a new 1400 horsepower engine, which was a large upgrade over the previous one. Supposedly, this allowed it to reach a top speed of 80 kilometers an hour, and the Object 219M supposedly had a power-to-weight ratio of around 30 horsepower per ton, which would imply a weight of around 47 tons, roughly the same as the T-80 BVM. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank GMG Smiley, CD Beans, Chieftain Mike, EMN3 Galaxy, Tulio Pontecorvo, Brendan Quinn, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Wartinder, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Martinez, B. Young, Ozzy Panzer, Alan Hacker, Liam Shear, Opium Prime, Lafouche, Sem Aslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R. for supporting the channel.